Okay, Bismillah. So this section is talking about difficult questions. And the difficult questions are essentially the questions that can't be or shouldn't be answered directly in the sense of, well, you have to believe in God and the Quran and the Messenger Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So, for example, why, why, just throwing a question out there, why did you guys do, this terrible act or whatever have you? Well, you have to believe in God, whatever have you. Because if you answer that, then you're basically saying, well, Islam condones that terrible act, right? Which it doesn't. So there are a number of questions that are peripheral to theology that you can't answer by directly talking about Islam. Okay, so that's what this whole section of difficult questions is. Now, one thing I'm going to caveat to begin with is I'm not going to be giving you the answers to each difficult question to begin with. Okay, what I'm going to be doing is to show you the techniques to answer such questions so that inshallah you can extrapolate those techniques to other questions. The common questions, and there are obviously a number of common questions, but inshallah with the common questions, my plan is at some point to create specific YouTube videos that will go in depth into answering those specific questions. And of course, I'm sure there's content and material from other du'at as well available to answer those questions. So yalla, bismillah, let's go with it. Right. So first technique is to fix the question. Okay. So just because a question is posed doesn't mean you have to accept the question as it is. There are questions that are loaded with some kind of a fallacy which makes them difficult to answer directly. So for example, let me give you an idea of a loaded question. Okay. If you were to ask a brother, has he stopped beating his wife yet? So you say, brother Fulan, have you stopped beating your wife yet? Now, how is he supposed to answer that question? Well, first of all, think about what's loaded in the question. What's loaded in the question is the fact that, or is the supposition that he beats his wife. And the problem is, if he answers yes, he stopped, it affirms that he beats his wife. If he says no, he hasn't, no, it basically suggests that he's still beating her. How does he answer that he doesn't beat her in the first place? Does that make sense? Like this is the problem with a loaded question, that the answer to the question should be, well, I don't beat my wife in the first place. Like where are you getting this from? So the idea here is fix the question. Make the question make sense first before you even begin to tackle it, because if you attempt to tackle it as it is, you indirectly affirm the suppositions and the inferences that are within the question. Okay, so for example, you have the question, why does God need us to worship him? Well, the inference here, which is a false inference, is that Allah needs us to worship him, whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need us to worship him, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, well, what need do we have? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We've gone over the properties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our worship of Allah does nothing. It doesn't increase the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has maximum perfection, which we can't increase by our ibadah. So the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is only for our benefit. It's for the benefit of society as a whole, for the benefit of mankind as a whole. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even says that, he doesn't need us. He doesn't need anything from us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically free from us. So this idea that, we perform salah, whatever have you, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs it, that's a fallacy in and of itself. Nowhere does it say that. Nowhere do we even suggest that. So this is an incorrect supposition. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need us to worship him. Okay, we need to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for our own benefits, for our own salvations. Okay, can God create a four-sided triangle? Well, so this question is basically asking, can God do something that's absurd? Now, what we have to realize here is that there is no such thing as a four-sided triangle. Why? Because a triangle is literally just a label that we give to a shape that is by definition defined by three sides. That's why triangle. It's got three angles in it. It's got three sides. Okay, so if you added a fourth side to it, it would by definition not be a triangle anymore. Okay, so the point is here is like, can we apply a label to something else? Like, can God make an elephant which looks, sounds, and acts exactly like a giraffe? Well, yeah, but that would be a giraffe. Do you get the point? Like, if it has the properties of something else, that's what we're going to call it. It's going to be something else. Even if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala magically transformed an elephant to look, sound, and act like a giraffe, it would be a giraffe then. We would call it a giraffe. We wouldn't call it an elephant masquerading as a giraffe. Do you see the difference here? So again, fix the supposition here. What are they actually asking? Because some of these questions really make no sense when you think about it. Okay, here's another common one. Can God create a rock so heavy that even he can't lift it? Right? Which again is one of those catch-22 situations. Well, if he can't lift it, then he's not God, and if he can't create something that powerful, then again he can't be God. It's a stupid dilemma, because ultimately what the question rephrased is asking you to do is, can God set about to do something and then fail to do so? Which means, now think about this. Think about the mechanics of actually having to lift something and then failing to do so, right? When we fail to lift something, why is that? It's because gravity, the gravitational mass, the force of attraction is overriding, the force of that is overriding the force that we can exert to lift it up, right? There is something external to us that is overriding, that is preventing our strength from lifting up that rock. What's going to prevent Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from doing anything? I mean, think about it. What's going to prevent Allah subhanahu, like, even if there was the biggest rock in the world and you wanted to play by these rules of physics, what's to prevent Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from just turning off gravity or just changing the rules of gravity or whatever have you, right? It literally, the question in of itself makes no sense, because it's asking, can Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically be bound by his own rules, subjected to them, and that these rules become stronger than Allah? No, of course not. That's just ridiculous. So again, the question here needs to be understood or corrected, because just the supposition behind the question it shows that there's already a problem there. Okay, so the problem is actually with the person asking the question. Okay, that there's a fundamental misunderstanding that they don't have there. Okay, right. We can also flip the question. So when we're asked, why do you do X, Y, and Z, don't necessarily assume that, that's the wrong way to do things, and everybody else is correct, because it could just be that we're doing the things correctly and everyone else is doing something wrong. So, for example, by the way, a lot of these are from Sheikh Kamal al-Makki. I think that, a lot of this whole section is mostly based on this a similar thing in his course. So, for example, why do Muslim men grow beards? Well, we don't grow our beards. It literally comes out by itself. What we don't do is ritualistically shave it off every morning. That's what other people do. So ask them, why do you ritualistically shave off what is natural every single morning? Again, we don't have to be the ones to justify whatever's happening naturally, because we have no conscious control over it. Does that make sense? So again, don't ask us why we're doing something. Why don't you ask yourself, why are you doing the thing? And we just don't subscribe to that thing. Khalas, simple. Why do Muslim women cover up? Why does anybody cover up? What is, and again, modesty. Well, they have more modesty. Like, what is the limit for modesty? I get this one all the time. This is particularly fun on social media, where particularly women say, oh, they shouldn't cover up so much, it's not natural. Like, literally, this, even the last week I had one woman saying, oh, it's not natural to cover up, and this, that, and the other. I was like, yeah, it's totally natural to be naked just the way you were born. I don't see you naked in your photos, so what's this? Are you hypocritical now? But only then will they realize, well, oh, no, I can't be completely naked. Like, so where's the limit? What's the limit in terms of how much covering up that you can and should be doing? Because at this point, then it just becomes arbitrary. It just becomes driven by social pressure. Who's defining the limit? So some people have one limit, other people have another limit. Who's to say that one is right or one is wrong, right? Unless you've got some degree of an objective anchor, which we as Muslims have, because that is the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as explained to us by the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But who is anyone else to come along and say, oh, no, it should be X, Y, or Z? How do you know that? What did you define that? Right? Why do bad things happen? Okay, why shouldn't they happen? We live in the world, in the world of cause and effect, and some things happen that we find favorable, and some things happen that we find unfavorable. But just because bad things happen, like, why shouldn't they happen? And they shouldn't happen all because it's got, well, if you don't want bad things to happen, there's a place for that. That's called paradise. That's called Jannah. If you want to get there, you have to, prove that you're worthy first and foremost. You can't just say, well, I'm going to disbelieve in God because I wasn't, put straight into Jannah in the first place. Like, where did that even come from? Aisha radiallahu anha shouldn't have been married as a child. Okay, fine. Well, there's also a supposition there, by the way, in the question, which we shouldn't really acknowledge that she was married off as a, well, okay, fine, she was married off as a child, because there's the implication there of the consummation as a child. Okay, but anyway, the point here is like, okay, fine, what age is acceptable? What age should she have been married off? Oh, 18. Why 18? Is that just because the country where you are from now, in a completely different separate continent, in a completely different time, different circumstances, has decreed as 18? Oh, what, so if you're saying 18, then what about all the countries in the world where the age of marriage is 17 or 16, or even in some states in America, the age I think is 14 or even 12, I think. I might be wrong. Who's deciding these ages? What age are you deciding? And even if you say it's 18, so what happens if she gets married when she's 17, the day before her 18th birthday? Is that bad? Is that wrong? What happened literally at the stroke of midnight that made it not okay one moment, but then okay in an immediately a moment that came immediately afterwards, you know? Immediately following moment, explain it. And if they say, well, no, okay, fine, the day before is fine. Well, okay, fine. If the day before is fine, then what about the day before that? What about the day before that? Like, if you're going to come up with a limit, how exactly did you define this limit? Was it just an arbitrary thing, right? Or is it based on some kind of a real world metric, right? Why don't you, why don't you, what, answer that. Why don't you eat vermin? Why don't you eat rats? You know, and people will be offended by that. Just because yani you guys eat pork doesn't mean we have to. There are some cultures around the world, well, one predominant culture that eats dogs. We don't, I don't want to eat dog, and I'm sure people I know don't want to eat dogs. But yeah, each to their own. Like the point is, like, and again, this is, we already answered, like, why don't you eat pork? And we can, there is the answer there that you can call the person to Islam or whatever, having explained this ruling from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But again, this is for some people who are just trolling, whatever have you. Don't go to this as the first one. This is just showing you a technique that you can use if need be, that you can just flip the question on them and just make them think, well, why is it that you're posing the question to us? Why don't you think about it? Like, why are you eating pork? Does that make sense? Very, very strong fallacy of presentism. Yeah, ethnocentrism. I guess that was related to the question about Aisha radiallahu anha. Okay, using facts. Religion is the cause of most wars. Not true at all, because if you think about it and if you examine the facts, that the wars are actually fought over land, money, or other such resources. There are no wars that are started off by saying, oh, well, these people believe in this kind of a god, so let's go and fight them and kill them. It doesn't happen. It's always to do with the case of, well, there's land, there's resources, there's money, there's something else there, and religion is just used as a pretext because it motivates the people. Because generally speaking, if you're going against, especially like the Middle East or whatever have you, you're going against a homogenous group of people, and you can basically, if it's like America fighting someone in the Middle East, it's basically Christians invading the Muslims, whatever have you. You can use that religious pretext to motivate the people going into it, but the actual reason wasn't religion. The actual reason for it was basically resources. So, and also, if you have a look at, the greatest killers in modern history, again, they were atheists, So this, but the thing is, because they were atheists and religion doesn't play a factor, then people don't count that as, then, oh, okay, people are dying because of atheism. People just ignore that statistic. You ask them, right, how many people did atheism kill? They won't tell you, because they don't ignore the statistic, because it's the atheists that count every single time that a non-atheist, i.e. a theist, killed someone. Oh, religion again, religion again, religion again. This is the problem. They love to not look at themselves. Cutting off hands off a thief is barbaric. Well, according to and I got this actually from Sheikh Kamal Maki, right, whom I trust. But according to research that he explained that basically, when asked if people had the choice of having their hand cut off and that they could go home and atone privately for their sins, or basically remain incarcerated for decades where their family and everyone else would be struggling, they would never get to see anyone, whatever have you, they would choose to lose their hand. So actually, the barbaric thing is to basically keep them incarcerated where they have little hope for for atonement, where they can get out of it, because when people come out of prison, most of them reoffend and go straight back in because they become institutionalized and whatever have you. Actually, once they go into the system, and especially in America, because it's a money-making system, it's very, very, very difficult for them to come out. So actually, jailing people and things like that is a barbaric practice. And again, on top of that, Islam has got a very rigorous defense system as well, which is to favor letting guilty people walk rather than to punish an innocent individual. And this is also another famous one as well that people bring up, that Prophet Muhammad SAW killed an entire Jewish tribe. Well, yes, but what you also have to recognize is that Jewish tribe broke a peace treaty, or with a pact with the Muslims. They basically committed treason to attack the Muslims, particularly when they were at the most vulnerable point. So they basically had to have some degree of punishment, and they were the ones that chose who would be their arbitrator. They had their own arbitrator, the one who they chose themselves, who was Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, and Sa'd ibn Mu'adh judged them by their own laws, and their own laws basically was that they had to be, they had to pay for it by death. So literally, they were hung by their own rope. Right, only just because it was the Muslims that executed it doesn't mean that the situation was brought on by the Muslims. That was something that history knows that they literally did themselves. So again, use the facts. At the end of the day, treason, still in countries around the world, treason is punishable has the death sentence, and that's still law today. Use the simplest explanations first. Okay, so don't go into the hard and heavy explanations like, why do women cover up? Use something simple, that women are attractive. Women's hair is attractive, right? How do we know this? Well, how even in the Western world, right? You have a look at, and I'm not saying to go and do this. I'm imagining here that if you had a look at the sexiest men of pop culture, you would see a fair number of bald individuals there. Baldness is cool, but and trust me, I know this thing because obviously, when you become bald, you become sensitive to magazines that have this kind of stuff on there. But especially obviously also being involved in social media, whatever have you. But baldness is sexy or whatever have you. For men, for women, absolutely not. I can't think of a single individual. I can actually I can actually only ever think of one. I think it's Tilda Swinton. I think that's her name. I don't know, but who made a thing of being bald, and even that was temporary. But I think it was for one film or something stupid like that. But the point is, women, overwhelmingly across the board, make a deal of their hair. Make a deal of their hair, and that's just the thing, that women can be defined by their hair. You can well, there's a number of women in pop culture that become defined by their hair. The most famous one, I think, would be, say, for example, Jennifer Aniston. Whereas, in pop culture, I think there's probably only ever been one guy who's been famous for his hair, and that's Steve from Stranger Things. But even then, that was because it was imitating how women have their hair. So again, again, go with the simplest one, that look, from your own culture, that women's hair is recognized as something special and distinct to men's hair. It's attractive. And then you can go into, obviously, more in-depth theologically sound explanations if they want more convincing. Why can men have many wives but women not have many husbands? Well, think about it, right? Okay, look. Forget the fact, okay, there are naturally more women than men or whatever have you, provides more options. Okay, this is the other thing, actually, also think about it. It actually provides more options for women than it does for the men, because think about it, right? If you have, imagine you got 100 people, right? 50 women, 50 men, okay? Split 50-50, and half are married and half are not. So of the 50 women, 25 are married, and obviously the other 25 are not, and of the men, 25 are married. Now, the 50 men, when they're looking for which additional wife that they want, of the 50 women, how many do they have access to? Only 25, because the other 25 are married. So they've got a very smaller pool. But of the women who are looking for marriage, obviously only the women who are not married can look for marriage. So the 25 women who are looking for marriage, which of the men do they have access to? All of them. Because they could be the guy's first, second, third, or even fourth wife. So it actually opens up the choice for women more so than it does for men. It's just, but unfortunately we don't see it that way. Also, just think about the mechanics of, how is a woman supposed to deal with 4 husbands if she falls pregnant? because when she falls pregnant, that's a 9-month exercise. So she's gonna do what? Fall pregnant with the one guy's baby, and then straight after that, the other guy wants to have a child as well. So she falls pregnant again, let's just say immediately afterwards, even though it doesn't quite work like that, but okay, immediately afterwards. So that's now 18 months she's been pregnant. And then, the other two also want their turn as well. So let's just say even if she has back-to-back pregnancies, that's what, 18 months, 36 months, that's 3 years of back-to-back pregnancies, and in between that she's got babies to suckle and whatever have you. And then what happens if the husbands are of different financial influence, so one husband is really rich, the other one is not so much. Like, how is she going to split the food between them? Like, okay, your daddy paid for you to have a steak, and your daddy paid for you to have broccoli, and how is a mother going to do that and split up basic needs for her kids like that? I mean, just think about it. The mechanics of it just simply cannot work. So this question again is just born completely out of ignorance. Okay, explain concept and purpose. That sometimes, okay, I want to see God, right? Okay, so again, so this is again segue onto this last one, that people just don't realize how dumb their questions are. Like, I want to see God. Like, really? You want, like, can you imagine? We can't even look at blinding light, or there are certain things that we cannot look at, because if we were just exposed to it, not only would we go blind, there are some things that if we were exposed to it, that literally would destroy us and disintegrate us. Yet you want to see with your own naked gaze the creator of all of this? Like what kind of madness is this? Like, do you even understand what it is that you're asking? Why can't God have a son? God, it's like, what? Like, think about it. How can something that is uncreated, right? Something that uncreated, and it's not biological in the same sense that we're biological, then create something with the exact same properties that is uncreated? That in and of itself makes no sense. Like, what are you asking here? I mean, we understand the words that are coming out of your mouth, but they make absolutely no sense. Oh, I want world peace and no evil. Okay, so you want paradise. You want paradise. You literally want paradise. Work for it. Earn it. You can't just sit there and say, oh, I want world peace, I don't want to do anything about it. Yeah, all you have to do is say, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, pray your salah, give your zakat, fast in the month of Ramadan, go for Hajj. Even if you just do all that as a minimum, you get Jannah. So yeah, live 50, 60 years on this world, whatever it is, until you meet your maker, and then thereafter, khalas, you're in Jannah, you've got it. If you really want it, that's the solution. There you go. You want to see the miracle? Okay, where has the Quran fallen short? Like, define a miracle. Like, what do you want to see? You want to see some magical presentation or something like that in the sky? No, that's not going to happen just for you, just because you want it, because everybody else would be wanting it, and then it would be commonplace, and then it would, by definition, not be a miracle. If you want an actual miracle, something that is outside the productive capacity of mankind, then where has the Quran fallen short? And refer back to the lecture that we did on the Quran, the miracle of the Quran, where we've explained why that is a miracle. Okay? Analogies, right? Sometimes looking at an issue, I remember Ibrahim alayhi salam discussing with Nimrud about life and death, and then switched to the rising of the sun. Yes, which was basically Nimrud. He said, Ibrahim alayhi salam mentioned to Nimrud that his Lord Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives life and death. Whereas Nimrud thought, I'm going to answer this. He basically brought two prisoners forth and killed one, and let's set one free and said, there you are, I've just done the same thing. Obviously not getting it. So then, Ibrahim alayhi salam basically said, well, my Lord brings, causes the sun to rise. Let's see you do that. Right. So if God is good, then why does he allow evil? By the way, there's a whole, the problem of evil is a really, really, really good question. There's a number of responses to it, which inshallah I will create a video for and upload that on YouTube. So I don't want to answer that completely here. But the question here is, well, what is evil? Define what is evil. When a lion kills a gazelle and eats it, is that evil? Which people will say, well, no, it's not evil. The lion's just fulfilling its needs. Well, then if a man goes out and kills another man and eats it, is that evil? Oh, yes. Well, why? Because that we inherently understand, we can see the similar acts between animals, calling man an animal here, a separation of a plant. But what I'm getting at is, evil here is just our subjective interpretation of what an act is, because you could have two different acts. The same act which are perceived in two different ways. For example, Muslims will see the consumption of alcohol as an evil, whereas Western society will not. So that just basically shows that evil here is just a subjective interpretation of an objective act, and who's defining what? Who defines what's good and what's bad and whatever? Whose standard are you using? What does the question even mean in this regard? There is only one life and no resurrection, right? Oh, okay. So yeah, here's an analogy. Even infants and animals understand the concept of retribution. Okay, so for people that say that, okay, look, there's only this one life, basically what they're basically saying is, regardless of whatever happens to you in this world, that's it, khalas. However you leave the world, that's the end of your existence, and you are forevermore no more. But even a baby understands the concept of an ultimate, that there needs to be some degree of retribution or whatever have you. So for example, if a baby falls and hurts itself on the side of the table, starts crying, you literally got to smack the table, naughty table, to show the baby, to get the baby to stop. I'm a father of two, trust me. So that's how it works, right? So even the baby, whilst the baby doesn't understand anything, the baby recognizes that there has to be justice delivered, and that table hurt me, so someone more powerful has to be able to, provide justice, which then infers a belief in the most just, the supremely just. Again, this is only an analogy. This is not a proof, by the way, but this is just something to show that, look, that the belief in justice, the belief in something that to happen thereafter, the belief in accountability is something that's innate to human beings. Why does God punish eternally for sins that were finite in time? Because even though, well, yeah, okay, like a murderer only just stabbed someone for a second, but we locked them up for life because of the nature of the act itself. That if they were allowed out, if they had their freedom, they would just continue to cause mischief in and of themselves. It's not the punishment is not linked to how long it took them to commit the act, but it's linked to the severity of the act, basically. The same way as we do it in this world. Why should I pray if my final destination is written, right? Well, again, your income is written as well, so just don't go to work and see what happens. Just because it's written, you don't know. Maybe it's written 0 because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, obviously, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not bounded by time, that you're just going to be lazy and just going to be sit there and be stubborn and just not learn anything. You don't know what's written. Here's the thing, it is written. So you can be happy that, so long as you tried your best to get what you want, what you'll get, what was written for you, will come to you. But that's not an excuse to go the other way, to say, well, I just won't do anything, because whatever's going to come my way is going to come my way anyway, because it could just be that written for you was nothing. Unless you try, you'll never know. Why has this paused? I'm hoping, okay, the stream is still live. You guys still here? My video just paused, and I need to research, why does it do that at this regular time in the stream? It didn't completely drop out there. Okay, fine. Use stories. Okay. Oh, actually, I do have a slide on the problem of evil here. Okay. Use stories. Okay. So we have within the corpus of hadith, we have a number of different hadith on different topics or whatever have you. Narrate one. Use a story. Everybody loves stories because stories are inherently sticky. So people will remember the story, right? I've been evil all my life. God will never forgive me, right? Okay, so are your sins greater than do your sins outweigh the forgiveness of Allah, the most forgiving? Like, come on, like you're just like this tiny speck on a speck on a speck and a speck, like literally nothing. Whereas the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is unlimited. So first of all, don't think that you are beyond forgiveness. And again, we have a number of examples of Sahaba, people who fought against Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that killed Muslims, that then, repented and went on to become great Sahaba. Now, of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have forgiven them. So, there is, and also you have the hadith of the man who killed 99 as well. I'm still searching for the truth. It's like, well, okay, but at some point you've got to stop. Like some people, when you explain to them the message of Islam, oh yeah, it all makes sense, very happy with it, but I'm still searching. It's like, yeah, you can't sit on the fence your entire life, like because this is like the story of the guy When there's a flood coming, he's like, oh, God save me, and people come by in a raft and say, quick, jump in. No, I just put my trust in God. And a bigger boat comes by. No, no, I'll trust in God. And then a helicopter comes by and says, listen, you're the last guy. We need to get you out of here. No, 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 I trust God will save me, whatever have you. And then the guy drowns. Then he says to God, God, why didn't you save me? And God says, since you, a life raft, a boat, a helicopter, what more do you want? Like, you literally had the things there. All you had to do was grab onto the rope, but you didn't. You just literally just sat on the fence and killed yourself. Don't project that onto anything else. Oh, okay, here we go. My family will never accept me becoming Muslim. You don't have to announce it. King Negus, who was the ruler of a Christian nation, accepted Islam, didn't announce it, died as a Muslim, and he was the first one that Rasulullah then prayed janazah in absence over. When he passed away, Rasulullah prayed salat al-janazah over him from a different land. So again, we have these figures, we have these stories, we have these analogies. This is part of the reason why messengers were sent, to provide these real life examples that we could then adapt and apply to our own situation to understand how we should be acting in our situations. Okay, we have the whole problem of evil here, which as far as we can go into it. Right, okay, fine. Problem of evil, I probably want to do a separate video on this, but first thing to recognize is the problem of evil, first of all, it doesn't negate God's existence at all. By the way, what is the problem of evil? The problem of evil is basically where people say, well, if God is good, then evil can't exist, but because evil exists, then God can't be good, and if God is not good, then God doesn't exist, some nonsense like that, right? Okay, fundamentally, the evil in and of itself does not negate in any way, shape, or form the necessity of the divine reality existing. The only thing it can maybe negate is your perception of the nature of God, right? Is God basically all good? Yeah, God is all good. God is all wise. God also is powerful and just, which involves also punishing, those who transgress as well, right? Furthermore, evil, I would argue that evil actually demonstrates, or would actually prove, that God does exist, because in order to recognize evil, there has to be an objective anchor point. This is going to get a little bit philosophical, but there has to be an objective anchor point. There has to be a mechanism by which, how do you judge whether an act is evil or not? You need something objective, otherwise it just comes down to the whims of individuals in society. Without an objective anchor point to define, okay, this is evil or not, you can't really recognize what evil is. And the fact that we have this concept that requires an objective anchor necessitates there to be an objective anchor, which is basically God. So in a very, very roundabout way, the fact that you even recognize that evil exists necessitates that there has to be a God. It necessitates that there has to be an objective anchor point, basically. So you, even just saying that, oh, there is evil, you've gone ahead and demonstrated unwittingly that, okay, there must be a God. Because, okay, let me give you a simpler analogy, right? Does a computer recognize good and bad? No, it doesn't, because it has no basis to it, has no reason to, whatever have you. In the atheistic paradigm, we would not recognize good and bad. We would not recognize good and evil, right? We would just recognize events happening. The fact that we can attribute something is good, something is bad, is an indication that we recognize that there is an objective third anchor point that is transcendental to everything, which would be the divine reality. So you basically recognizing that evil exists is a subconscious recognition from your fitra that there is an objective anchor point, which is God. Okay, and then there is further explanations in there, which you can read the slides. We won't go necessarily into. And what would reality be like without evil? Yeah, can you imagine reality without quote unquote even? Like, imagine if I fell off my house, right? Would the ground below me just turn into a sponge, so I didn't have the evil of an injured leg or a shattered spine or whatever have you? Like, reality would cease to become coherent. Then it would just become completely random. So Allah, then one might say, well, what's Jannah going to be like? Well, in Jannah, I wouldn't be on the roof of my house fixing it, because it would be perfect in the first place. Does that make sense? So I think with that, we have done all of this, inshallah. Are there any questions on this? This basically is the last one. There are a couple of other sections, but I don't think we need to go into those. Now we'll just call it a day with this. So yeah, if there's no other questions, we will call it a day there, and I'll say Jazakallah khairan for attending. See, these will be up on YouTube, and obviously if you're watching YouTube already, hello, tell the people, share, whatever have you. Um, and yeah, let people know. I'm just trying to grow the YouTube channel, and inshallah, put more stuff up there. I'm going to try and start breaking down. I know we've done very, very, very long sessions. What I'm going to try and do is make shorter videos that cover individual points, so I can go into a point in some degree of detail, but make a 5-minute video or something like that on individual points. Kind of just a common question of atheists is that the world is flawed. Well, there's not going to be a next time. Go on and give me the question now. What is common question of the atheist that the world is flawed? What does that mean? That are you saying that they negate the perfection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creative ability because this dunya, this world, has flaws in it? Because this world was never created to be perfect. This world was only created to be fit for purpose, and the fitness for purpose was for us to use it as a testing platform to determine who's worthy and who's not worthy to have salvation or not. And not even for us as a testing platform, because at the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows this world actually was created to prove to us. Because if when we were created, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically just shows us some people and said, right, you go to Jannah, you go to Jahannam. Then the people in Jahannam would have said, oh, that's unfair, we would have been good, you didn't even give us a chance, and blah, 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 blah. So this world is basically us realizing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already came to know. I say came to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already knows, if that makes sense. They propose that the idea that there is no God because the world is flawed. That makes absolutely no sense. And because again, you need to have a stronger explanation. Just because the world is flawed, how does that negate that there is a God? The one does not necessarily follow the other, because in that they're assuming then that God would have created a perfect world and whatever have you. But then where is the link that they're saying that this world had to be perfect? Or not even that they that, like, what is perfection even? Because this world, you can also argue, is perfect in terms of what it was produced for. This world, like I said, it was created for a particular task and it's perfect for that task. Who are they to measure and say otherwise? See? So there's a degree of arrogance there, but in either case, it's non sequitur. It doesn't follow that, even if you want to recognize that there are flaws in this world or whatever have you, that you think you could have done better or you would have done better in, you can't even create a fly. You can't even create you can't even create the smallest thing. You want to talk about how to create an entire existence, right? But even then, even if you accept that, okay, fine, this world is not perfect, how does that in any way mean that there is no creator? Because you still have then no explanation of where everything originated from. Our proof for the divine reality was on the basis that for anything to exist, there needed to be something that necessarily existed. You haven't, atheists cannot overcome that. They will never overcome that by looking at the attributes of the creation. Like, Yani, if I come downstairs in the kitchen in the morning and I see there's an omelette there, that necessitates someone came and made the omelette. Like, just because I see bits of broken shell in it or whatever have you, doesn't negate the fact that somebody still made the omelette. Okay, cool. Yakum. Okay, Jazakallah khairan. So yeah, see you guys on my Facebook, on Twitch. No, not on. Well, we'll see what happens with Twitch after Ramadan, whatever have you. On YouTube, please do share the videos and let people know, because inshallah that'll also then help motivate me then to create others. And yeah, actually, jazakallah khairan. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.